You know, today it seems like we've become a nation obsessed with true crime. The success of the new series Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, highlights our thirst for all things horrifying, gory, bloody, and real. Now, Monster landed the #1 spot on Netflix, was streamed for 200 million hours when it first dropped. Now, that's a lot of people spending a lot of hours consuming unthinkable, traumatic, and true events, really as entertainment, as fascination, as obsession. Take a look.
The #1 show on Netflix this weekend was the mini-series on murderer Jeffrey Dahmer. The film reopens some old wounds for some of Dahmer's victims.
Actor Evan Peters plays the infamous cannibal killer. This is the actor, and this is the monstrous Dahmer. Dahmer, a chocolate factory worker, lured unsuspecting young men to his Milwaukee apartment where he drugged and strangled them. He dismembered his victims and ate their body parts.
Dahmer's bloody history finally came to an end when a young man he had targeted for death escaped the killer's apartment and alerted cops. Dahmer was arrested and confessed to 17 killings.
Now the new Netflix series is bringing memories of Dahmer's vile deeds flooding back. The woman who vented her anger on Dahmer watched the show's recreation of that moment and says, "It felt like reliving it all over again. It brought back all the emotions I was feeling back then."
Well, we're going to discuss why true crime has become such a fascination and how it's really affecting us. But first, angry family members of Jeffrey's victims and some of his survivors say the controversial drama actually re-traumatized them, and they feel it romanticized this monster, Jeffrey Dahmer. Some of them are here today to tell their story so they can be heard. Now, you've seen Hollywood's version. Today, we're going to be talking about the real story, meeting the real people involved and showing you the real monster behind the man. Now, we'll talk to the sister of one victim today who says the series glorified the man she calls Satan. And later, we're going to show you intimate, never before seen interviews with Jeffrey's own father and stepmother. This has never been seen. Take a look.
Jeff did exhibit an interest in the way bones clanked as he picked them up and put them back into the metal pail. There definitely were warning signs that I missed. He roamed around the country roads where we lived and gathered on his bike with big plastic bags the remains of various animals. And he kept these animals and felt them, explored them, their insides. He was extremely secretive and devious.
Now, what you just got a glimpse of is all coming up. But first, I want to welcome two men who say they were victims of Jeffrey Dahmer. The difference is they survived. Preston Davis and Billy Capshaw. Gentlemen, it's so good to meet you, and I mean that at two levels. It's good to meet you, and it's good that you're still here and alive and able to be met, because you now know a lot more about this individual you were dealing with, and realize you could easily have been numbers 18 and 19. That's hard to think about.
Yes, sir. It's real hard to think about. And it almost happened. You know, I went into the military when I was 17 years old and left home from a place in Arkansas, a little small town. And moving forward, I got to Germany, and there was a jolly guy who introduces me to my next roommate, and it was Jeff Dahmer. That was the first day I was there.
Okay, so when you're first there, he says you're going to have a roommate. This is him. This is Jeff Dahmer.
This is Jeff Dahmer.
Preston, how did you meet?
I actually met Jeff. I was in Germany from 1977 to 1980. I had about 8 months left in country. And my sergeant asked me to train the new gentleman, which was Jeffrey Dahmer. And that was July of 79. He told me that he would promote me to sergeant. And so we were out on a field exercise in Belgium, and I was to train him to be a medic. And the last few days of our exercise, our vehicle broke down. And during that time, I was drugged and raped by Jeffrey. At that time, I had no recollection of it. The following month, we were at a Thanksgiving dinner, and I had actually got into an altercation with Jeff, put him out into a blizzard. He came back with blood on his hands, didn't know where he'd been, what he'd done. Now, the only way I found that out was I was on the serial killer website, and I found out I was in a book called The Shrine of Jeffrey Dahmer, which was written by Brian Masters, and it mentioned me by name. It described the incident, and that kind of blew me away. At that point, I still really hadn't put it all together. And then when I left, this gentleman here replaced me. And I was contacted in 2012 to do a film on men rape in the military called Justice Denied. And so that's when I met Billy, and we went to Albuquerque, and we were in that film. And then it just started to take off. You know, God started revealing little bits and pieces. I went through my records. I realized I had all kind of rectal issues throughout my career. And that's basically how we met. And we've been doing this ever since.
What was your first impression of
Jeffrey? Was a very obnoxious individual. He was very different. And when I say that, I mean, you know, the average gentleman at 17 or 18 would talk about when we played football or basketball in high school, or I dated this girl, or I dated that girl. That was never discussed. He was just a very aloof type individual, smart, but just different. And, you know, once he drank, his whole personality would change. He was very racist. He talked about blacks, Jews, you know, how he was better than. And I remember precisely, you know, what he drank. He was a beef eater's gin drinker. And there was an incident where he urinated in my boots, and I beat him up because I boxed prior to going into the military, and they moved him out of my room. I didn't remember that. I thought I was fighting him because he called me out of my name. But one of the soldiers that I was stationed with recently told me that's what that altercation was about. And so I believe that was part of the reason why I was assaulted, as well as him being opportunistic. The reason I'm sitting here today, Dr. Phil, is, again, I was in Belgium. He had no way to get back to Germany. So if he had killed me, the questions would have been, well, where's Sergeant Davis? So technically, I'm supposed to be his second victim because he murdered Stephen Hicks in 1978. Mm-hmm. And he talked about that when he was drunk. Oh, I killed a guy. And we're like, you ain't killed anybody. Who would believe that somebody said they killed somebody?
Right.
So,
Billy, when you met him, you said at first that he was really friendly and
charismatic, friendly, kind of bows when he shakes your hand, kind of chuckles.
So you meet him at first, and yes, he's very friendly at first, and so you're bunking with him. Mm-hmm. At first you think, okay, I've drawn a pretty good roommate here. This is a nice guy.
First, but after
the second night, things took a different turn.
Yes, sir.
You watched a little bit of the series. What was your reaction?
I threw up. I cannot, for the sake of me, understand why anyone would want to glamorize that guy at all. That's sick.
At first, you think, okay, I've drawn a pretty good roommate here. This is a nice guy.
First, but after
the second night, things took a different turn.
Yes, sir.
What happened the second night?
He raped me, drugged me, and I'd have to, jumped out a window, 2-story window, broke my pelvis and my hip.
Okay. Now, this was the second night.
I was there. Yes,
that
sir.
You were there.
Yes, sir.
And you said he drugged you and raped you.
Yes.
And he also beat you.
Yes, he beat me so hard that I of course yelled, but if I yelled, he would hit me harder to stop the yelling. I just gave up. You know, and I cannot, for the sake of me, understand why anyone would want to glamorize that guy at all. That's sick. You know, it has to stop.
Dr. Phil, I believe the military knew. I spent a many a night laying in my house, and I'm like, how could they not know? Because I was in the military. He had a very short stint. I was in almost 10 years. And so, you know, I knew the structure on how it went. You make formation, which is where you're accounted for, where we have all the cooks, whatever. And then you run, you shower, and then you go to your particular job area. This man never made formation. Jeff made formation when I was there. How in the heck could they not know that this man was being tortured? I wrestled with that, and I finally came to the conclusion that everything in this spiritual realm or in the flesh is not for me to know. Something, God knows all. It's not for me to know, because I would have lost my mind trying to figure out how in the hell did the military. They had to know.
They did know.
They had to know.
I have a letter that was written to me about 10 years ago from a warrant officer. He was under investigation for the death of a man named Hans. He was the last one seen with Hans.
He who?
Jeff. Jeff was under the investigation, I'm sorry, for the murder of a man named Hans. Yeah, they knew.
You watched a little bit of the series. What was your reaction?
I threw up. It made me sick to think that someone would take advantage of a community, a black community, African American community, LGBTQ community. All these people that I've been fighting for since I've got hurt. All these people that, and then some guy comes in, I have a better choice of words I can't use on TV, comes in and undermines everything that these people stand for. I think he re-victimized them, re-traumatized them, shamed them, the whole gamut. They call me, you know. This lady and this guy from Netflix call me. I am not doing anything for them like that. And I said, if it's to glamorize them, I'm hanging up right now. And she started to try to explain to me what they were doing, and I got off the phone. I'm not doing it.
Have you watched any of it?
Yes, I did watch it. I felt it was over the top. They didn't need to present it the way that they did. I think it was insensitive for the way it was done. The majority of people know the story, at least the civilian part of it. I think they glamorized it. But on the other token, I felt that overall it needed to be told, because there are people like myself and people in the audience that serial killers are normal. They look normal, they talk normal, they act normal, and so the public needs to be aware that there are people walking amongst us that are potential killers.
They got the character wrong in the movie, by the way. I don't know where they came up with that. I actually watched some of it, and it did trigger me, and, you know, that's not how he acts. Jeff is very charming, very charismatic. He was successful at everything he did in there.
And this still affects you today?
Yes, sir, it does. I've lost a son over this. A 20-year-old son shot himself because of this.
How so?
He hated me talking about it. Everybody was talking about it. He said, Dad, would you please stop talking about this?
Billy claims he reported Jeffrey's abuse to a nurse and even did a rape kit. So how come Jeffrey wasn't stopped right then? We'll talk about that next. He broke your hand,
he broke my hip.
Your foot.
Yes.
He stabbed you.
He stabbed me, I think he counted 30 times. And this actually is a fingerprint right here.
I see that.
Grab it here and choke.
Dahmer was 33 when he told Nancy Glass about his twisted motive for killing 17 men.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons, and eventually I did turned to cannibalism.
That man had his hands on both of you.
Yes, sir.
What's your reaction to hearing him speak and say those things, knowing that he had you incapacitated, drugged, and had his hands on you?
I really suffered once I realized what happened to me, survivor's guilt. I basically suppressed my feelings with drugs and alcohol for a while. It's a miracle that I'm still married. But I blame myself for what happened to Billy because I didn't remember. And I remember when I met Billy and Billy had told my wife what happened, and my wife asked Billy, how could he not remember? 30 years, Dr. Phil. I did not have any inkling what happened to me. When he got caught, I didn't realize what happened to me. I was actually watching a show on serial killers in 1992 in Virginia, and what cued me was they showed the patch. We had an 8 on our uniform, and at that point, I still didn't realize I had been raped, but I realized that I had been stationed with him. And so it was years later that I realized what had happened to me, and it just kind of blew me away, you know.
Well, Preston, he says that he didn't commit any crimes out of hate, but you said you sensed racism and hate spewing out of him.
Yes. I was not afraid of Jeff. I actually knocked Jeff out because he urinated in my boots, and they moved him out of my room. And that was early on when I met him in probably July or August of '79. So he was definitely a racist. Mm-hmm. But it's not for me to say, you know, I'm not going to play the race card and say he was, you know, it was white privilege. But that's something Billy.
It was white privilege.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
The charisma, the good-looking guy from Wisconsin, and he played all these people. And he's lying in that interview. He's lying. He was a practiced liar, practiced manipulator, practiced everything. How can you get like that young?
He would rape and beat you
continuously, all the time.
How many times a week?
I wasn't counting, sir, but I will tell you it was more than 5. It was more than, it depended on how much he drank. I actually stole his money out of his wall locker while I was doing that. I found ketamine bottles. I was a medic as well at 17 years old. I found ketamine. I found lorazepam or Ativan.
He kept you injured. He broke your hand. He broke your foot.
Yes.
He stabbed you.
He stabbed me, I think we counted 30 times. And this actually is a fingerprint right here.
I see that.
I'm grabbing here and choke.
He stabbed you 30 times.
He said that he was going to take my prostate out. I was tied up at the time. He had given me something IV, which as medics we had, access to all that stuff.
You're in the military. You had a rape kit done.
You would never think that this would happen.
You told a nurse you had a rape kit done.
Right.
What happened?
She threw it away. And I communicate with this nurse all the time. She's in a VA health care.
It's a senior or a VA.
She's been in there since 1984 or 5.
Yeah. Institutionalized.
Institutionalized.
Yeah. So somehow or another she threw it away.
These guys need to understand, Ryan Murphy and all these people who developed this stuff need to understand that's what happens. I'm lucky I didn't kill myself. I attempted suicide 3 times. I was going to kill him, okay? I wanted to kill him. Trust me, he almost died. But I had enough sense and a great enough family and a mother that would have not understood that. I wanted my mama. I wanted my brothers and my 5 sisters. I wanted them back. And I knew if I killed myself, I knew if I killed him, I'd never see him again.
Does it help you to be able to tell your side of the story now, here?
Yes, it does. I'm happy to get to tell it. And I'm going to talk and talk and talk because you don't know what your freedom is until it's taken away.
Yeah. You said you were afraid to report this. What do you think would have happened if you had said this?
My own people would have killed me. They would have.
Your unit?
They would have, yes. Yes. Yeah. Back then, you were not allowed to be gay, and that was the first thing they would have thought. I didn't tell my own father, okay? My mother knew it already. I was going to a psychiatrist and nobody even knew. And, you know, it's just hard, the shame that you get from a community.
They both think there may have been other victims in Germany. Jeffrey Dahmer returns to the base one night with blood on him, and it corresponds with someone going missing, which they find out a bit later. Plus, we're going to meet the sister of one of Jeffrey's victims who came face to face with this monster in court. She said she is sickened by how the Netflix series glorified the man who she called Satan. That's next.
Only the sister of Errol Lindsay was unable to contain her rage.
I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again. Jeffrey, I hate you! I hate you!
Closed captioning provided by I'm back talking with two gentlemen that intersected in their lives with Jeffrey Dahmer, Preston and Billy. Before I have a few more questions for you guys, I'm curious, how many here have seen the Netflix series Dahmer? Okay, that's almost everybody here. As graphic as it was, I think sometimes if the focus is on him and not the tragedy, pain, and suffering of the victims, this affects the two of you for the rest of your life. And you say you were beaten and tortured and raped time and time and time again. You say you've had rectal issues throughout your life. You had your hands broken, foot broken, feared for your life, reached out for help, no one listened, the pain you endured night after night. And you guys do believe that he was going off base and victimizing others. He did show up covered in blood, with blood on him.
Yeah, he had so much blood on him that when he took his clothes off, he had to peel his clothes off. That's
Peel
how
them
much,
off.
Peel them off.
Because they were stuck to him with blood?
They were stuck to him. He had been out. He had been gone all weekend.
Wait, how do you show up covered in blood and everybody goes, hey, hey?
Because you're not going through a lock post. Like if you were to go to like a Fort Hood or another base, you may have to go through a gate. Baumholer was an open community, and you just come right up into the road, park your car and go into the barracks. You have one person, we call him a CQ, charge of quarters. You could very easily cover with a coat. You know, going back to 1979, and we just recently figured this out. 1979, when I talked about where we got into an altercation and he came back, that was November 22nd, which was Thanksgiving. Erica Hanstuf had been missing approximately 5 days. They found her body on November 30th. So with Jeff coming back with blood on him, we surmised that he murdered her. That was within that time frame. Hans, that was murdered, I knew personally was a German national because we used to get together and play cards on the weekend. His murder took place after I left Germany, as did the Pond Man. So Billy could expound on those two individuals. Yeah. But he definitely was killing in Germany.
Well, Rita Isbell is the sister of one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. She was so overcome with emotion when she came, as she says, face to face with evil at Jeffrey Dahmer's sentencing, that she threatened to kill him and was dragged out of the courtroom.
Never, Jeffrey! Jeffrey, I hate you! I hate you! Something's out of control! Don't Jeffrey, I kill you, God damn it, look at me!
That's real. Rita Isbell, the sister of Errol Lindsay, joins us now remotely. She says watching portions of Monster on Netflix left her feeling like she was reliving her worst nightmare. Rita, it's an honor to meet you.
Same here. I'm just, listening to the two gentlemen. It just blew my mind. That lets me know that I was right the whole time when I was in front of him, Dr. Phil. I felt it.
You felt the presence of evil when you were with him.
I felt it. I felt it.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Just talk through the tears. What did you feel like? What did you feel a presence when you looked him in the eye?
I was face to face with Satan himself. My brother was the one, he drilled a hole in the head and poured the acid in. And my brother woke up and told him he had a headache, so therefore he had to kill him then. That's when he strangled him.
Closed captioning provided by all through the trial, they were trying to portray Jeffrey Dahmer as being insane and out of control, and you didn't buy that for a second.
No.
You thought this was purposeful, intentional, and he knew exactly what the hell he was doing.
You heard the two gentlemen. Yes. He started out with them and brought it on to Milwaukee.
Did you know that your brother had met him at the time, or was this something that you learned after the fact?
I learned after the fact. After the fact. I'm still learning. I'm still learning right today.
And what weighs on you the most heavily, Rita?
Every time I think that I'm done with the story, new stories come out, just like today. I feel so bad for the two gentlemen. I really feel bad for you. I do. That's why I'm crying right now. I'm crying for them.
When you think about this, do you think about Jeffrey Dahmer, or do you think about what your brother went through? What is it that haunts you the most?
Well, 31 years ago, the time has passed, so I was kind of dealing with it. But since the movie came out, and the way he told the movie and showed the movie and lied about him contacting us, he didn't contact none of us. And he said that he did, Ryan Murphy.
He did not contact you or anyone in your family?
No. No.
Let me read you a statement that he made. Ryan Murphy, the creator of the series Monster, claims he did reach out to victims prior to production of Monster. According to the Hollywood Reporter, quote, over the course of the three and a half years when we were really writing it, working on it, we reached out to around 20 of the victims' families and friends, trying to get input, trying to talk to people, and not a single person responded to us in that process. So we relied very, very heavily on our incredible group of researchers who, I don't even know how they found a lot of this stuff, but it was just like a night and day effort to us trying to uncover the truth of these people.
Don't act like you know me. You know, don't act like you know that history of that trauma. She don't know nothing. And I said she should have listened to me and the families. They could have toned that down. They could have toned it down.
Well, Dr. Phil, I want to say this, and Rita, I'm sorry for your loss. To me, it should have never got to the 17. I can understand me because I was drugged and it was a one-time incident. But knowing the military for 10 years, they could have stopped it with him.
And Rita, none of this was portrayed, and your brother lost his life. Tell us about your brother.
Well, he just went to go and get a key made and ran into Jeffrey Dahmer. He asked him, would you like to make extra money doing our jobs? He said, yeah, let me go in here and get this done and come back out. He came back out. He told him, well, you have to come back with me to my apartment for more details. My brother was the one he drilled the hole in the head and poured the acid in. And my brother woke up and told him he had a headache, so therefore he had to kill him then. That's when he strangled him. Yes, child. Jeffrey Dahmer, like they said, he should have been caught many years ago. He had his way here in Milwaukee. Jeffrey Dahmer owned Milwaukee.
You say that you think Jeffrey poured something into your brother's head to try to turn him into a zombie.
Recorded. Yeah, that's what happened. According to what Jeffrey Dahmer said, the gentleman was saying that the military knew about it. I feel that the police department here, they knew about it too. He had his way here in Milwaukee. Jeffrey Dahmer owned Milwaukee.
He robbed you of your brother, and he robbed your brother of this whole life he had stretching ahead of him. And describe your brother growing up. I mean, this is a young man that you love dearly.
Yes, he was more like my son than my brother. Very outgoing, very strong personality. He was a big brother to my children. He loved sports. He loved to eat. He tried to cook. It's not a whole lot you can tell because he was just what, 34 days of being 19. His birthday was March 3rd. He left home April 7th. And I don't know if he even knew that he had children on the way.
Well, I think it's so important that you have the voice and you're able to put this in perspective so people don't buy this fiction, this fantasy about who Jeffrey Dahmer was, because this was a cold-blooded, calculated killer. And there's no other way to spin that. This was a premeditated, planful, calculating killer that preyed upon those that he could get an advantage on, that he could get leverage on, including this young brother of yours. And I just so hate that for you. I hate what he was robbed of. I hate what you were robbed of. And I tell you, you were my hero in that courtroom. You gave a voice to what so many people felt and what needed to be said. And I was so proud of you for, giving your feelings a voice at that point. And I'm going to ask you to stay with us here. We're going to take a break. Coming up, I want to talk about the obsession with this whole thing, true crime with Jeffrey Dahmer. Is our thirst for this kind of content desensitizing us to it, where we don't really think about the impact on the victims? We'll talk about that next. And later, we're going to go inside the mind of a serial killer and hear the truth about who he was, not the Hollywood version. And we're going to hear it because you're going to see a never-before-aired interview I did with Jeffrey Dahmer's father and stepmother. You're going to find out what they knew and what they felt when they found out what they didn't know. Coming up. It was said he had even impaled a dog's head on a stick.
I don't know if it's really true, but he told me that he found this dog that he decapitated.
Do you believe that there were warning signs that as a father you should have seen? Closed captioning provided by We've run out of time, but tomorrow we're going to continue talking about the man behind the monster. Who was Jeffrey Dahmer? The depth of his evil is much deeper than what could ever be portrayed in a scripted drama. Plus, our never-before-seen interview with Jeffrey's father and the stepmother that helped raise him. Tomorrow on Dr. Phil. If your kid is going around collecting dead animals, cutting them open and exploring them, how do you not know that?
I guess I was a little bit naive.
It was said that he had even impaled a dog's head.
He told me that he decapitated and put on a stake.
Tell me about the locked wooden box.
If I would have opened that box and found what was in there, I think I would have lost it.
But we now know the box contained a human head.
Psychopaths are born. Sociopaths are made. People that become serial killers start learning how to lie and manipulate when they are very young. They're always looking. They're always hunting.
There are Jeffrey Dahmers walking among us right now. A Dr. Phil 3-day special. That's tomorrow. You do not want to miss that. What was Dahmer's childhood really like? How did he develop a fascination with bones and dead animals? And how did he connect sexuality with roadkill? In a never-before-seen interview, I asked his father that very question. Also, see home video that could never predict the heinous crimes he would go on to commit. I want to thank all of my guests today. For more information about today's episode, or if you want to share your own story, log on to drphil.com. And if you want to add your voice to the conversation, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Now, I have a podcast, Fill in the Blanks, and I provide what I think is critical information on some of the most important issues that we're facing today. I talk to some real experts in some things that you have told me are important to your quality of life. Also, check out Robin's podcast, I've Got a Secret with Robin McGraw. She talks to functional medicine specialist Kelsey Kohler and shares her triumphant story of using her education and passions to escape her cult. All this is for free on Apple Podcasts or really wherever you listen to your podcast. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. Thanks.